I, 36M, grew up on a big farm that was owned by my family, who worked as farmers for generations. Much to the detriment of my parents, I hated the farm life from a very young age. I never liked dirt or grime, and farm animals were also never my thing. So to no one's surprise, I left the farm when I turned 18 and never looked back. I currently live in a big city. I still love my family very much and visit the farm from time to time, but I'm always the happiest when I return to my urban lifestyle. My mother passed away 3 years ago, and 2 months ago I unexpectedly lost my father due to a work accident. This left my younger brother Tom, 30M, and I, as the sole beneficiaries of their estate. I didn't expect to be left with much, since my folks helped me out financially more than enough times while they were still alive. I honestly only wanted a couple of family trinkets and heirlooms to keep as a keepsake. But to my surprise, as my brother and I sat down with the attorney to discuss our father's will, we discovered that I was left with the majority of the farm, about 3/4, while Tom was left with the rest. The only reason I can fathom behind this decision is that unlike Tom, I have two children, 10M and 7F, so maybe that's why I was given the bigger share? But I'm not entirely sure since my children had their own inheritance in the will. Either way, this split of inheritance was ridiculous, since unlike myself, Tom actually lived on the farm and dedicated his entire life to working on it alongside our parents. I saw that Tom was also shaken up by the decision, so I reassured him that I found it absurd as well, and I don't mind forfeiting the land to him. Tom said I didn't have to do that, but I insisted. After some back and forth on the topic, we mutually agreed to settle this between ourselves on a later date, when everything would be transferred under our names as our parents intended. I recently informed my wife Jules, 35F, of my decision regarding my inheritance, and she is furious with me for wanting to give most of it up. She is arguing that my decision is impulsive and short-sighted, since the farmland is worth a fortune, and I'm just giving it away without a second thought. I told her that the land is worth a fortune only for those who actually intend on doing something with it, and since I neither intend to sell it or farm on it, it's effectively useless to me. Jules continued to say that it might be useless to me, but I should think about our children who might one day want to start farming. I told her in that case I'll transfer only half of the land to Tom, so our children could have a 1/4 of the land at their disposal in the hypothetical scenario they get into farming one day. Jules is now not speaking with me until I reconsider my decision. I need to hear some unbiased opinions to see if I'm in the wrong here.
Comment 1. NTA, I may be way off, but it sounds like your wife saw a load of money slip from her fingers and she's angry rather than seeing the situation for what it is. You wanted nothing to do with the farm, but your brother has been there his whole life taking care of it. The split at the very least should have been 50-50. I think the scenario your wife gave of your children growing up and wanting to start farming is a stretch. You live in the city, they are growing up around urban lifestyle. I don't know your kids, but I don't think they're eager to start living that farm life. If she's that worried, keep 1/4 like you mentioned. Comment 2. Your wife is TA and way out of line. She's being greedy and she gets no vote. It wasn't left to her. Ask if she's looking forward to paying monumental property tax on land you don't want or need. Your poor brother. Does she expect you to sell it out from under him? You are a good man and brother. What's the likelihood kids raised in the city are suddenly going to want the manual labor life of a farmer? It's no flipping picnic. Comment 3. NTA, so how much taxes are you going to have to pay on this farm land that you won't be using? Is your brother going to be expected to work the entirety of the land that you have majority ownership of and only get a fraction of the revenue it generates? There are a lot of things to be taken into consideration here. I honestly think your wife is being greedy and using your guy's children as a smokescreen. My 26F boyfriend, 28M, and I live in a low cost of living city. Both have good white-collar jobs with decent salaries, and should be able to afford a nice life. My boyfriend is an immigrant and had worked very hard to get where he is now in his career, and yet he can't reap any of the benefits. My boyfriend's parents are mid-50s and apparently ready to retire. They live back in his home country where cost of living and taxes are pretty low, and are both college-educated professionals who have worked steadily for over 25 years, receiving great salaries. However, my boyfriend's father has made some very poor real estate investments and financial choices over the past decade that have essentially decimated their retirement fund. My partner's parents are now asking that he send them money every month to finance their upcoming retirement. The amount they have demanded, and he has begun sending, is well over half his monthly paycheck. He makes over $5,000 a month, with only $700 in rent and no car, and yet is barely getting by due to the money he has to send back home. Essentially, he is struggling and living paycheck to paycheck with no savings so they can have a comfortable early retirement. Before his parents proposed, or rather demanded, this arrangement, we were planning on buying a house, getting married, and starting a family in the next 2 to 3 years. Now, I have no idea how we can swing that. I work full-time, but make less than my partner and can't finance all of that on my own. I love that my boyfriend cares so much about his family and is so generous, but this is absurdly selfish of his parents in my opinion. We had a discussion last night regarding our future, and he more or less said that this is the way it's going to be and he will just have to make more money. While I appreciate his drive, you can't really just make more money overnight. It can take years to climb the corporate ladder to a significant level, and he doesn't even have the money to start some kind of side gig. I think this is partially due to our conflicting cultural values growing up in very different parts of the world, but I'm feeling really upset about this situation. I'm upset that his parents are choosing to watch their child struggle so they can live lavishly, and I'm upset that he is sacrificing or putting our future at risk due to his father's poor investment choices. Comment 1. Nah. You have a cultural difference. You need to sit down and figure out if this issue allows for you to be together long term. Comment 2. Genuine question. Everyone's saying that it's a cultural thing and that this is just how it is to have immigrant parents. Why? Do immigrant parents think it's totally fine to seriously impact their kids' future because they feel entitled to their kids' hard-earned money? Whenever they want it and however much they want? Children of immigrants are just supposed to be okay with that? With stunting their future to fund their parents? To be clear, I come from a culture of living with multiple generations under one roof to help out. But to feel like your kids owe you a significant portion of their paycheck so you can just retire early or have spending money, seems crazy. I, 27F, have been estranged from my older brother, Mark, 33M, for the past 5 years. We used to be close growing up, but our relationship deteriorated when he stole a significant amount of money from me, $25,000. Without going into too much detail, Mark was going through a rough patch and convinced me to lend him a large sum of money, which he promised to pay back within a year. I agreed because he was family, and I trusted him. But he never paid me back. When I finally confronted him about it, he blew up at me, calling me selfish and accusing me of not caring about his struggles. It turned into a huge fight, and we haven't spoken since. My parents tried to mediate, but Mark refused to apologize or even acknowledge that he did anything wrong. They've been stuck in the middle ever since, and it's put a strain on our family. Fast forward to now, my parents are planning a big celebration for their 30th wedding anniversary and they've invited both me and Mark. When I saw the WhatsApp group, I was shocked to see that Mark was included. I called my parents to talk about it, and they told me they're hoping this party could be an opportunity for us to reconcile. They think enough time has passed and that we should stop acting like kids, as my mother said. I was really upset by this. I explained to them that I'm still hurt by what Mark did and that I'm not ready to be in the same room as him, let alone celebrate with him. I told them that if Mark is going to be there, I won't be attending. My parents were disappointed and tried to convince me to reconsider, saying that family is more important than money and that holding on to grudges won't do anyone any good. They said it would break their hearts if one of us wasn't at their anniversary party. Since then, my parents have been distant with me, and I can tell they're hurt. I don't want to cause them any more pain, But I also don't want to be forced into a situation where I have to pretend everything is fine with Mark when it's not. My friends are divided on this. Some think I'm right to stand my ground, while others think I'm being too stubborn and should go for the sake of my parents. Comment 1. NTA. Your parents can invite whom they like, and an invitation is not a summons. You are entitled not to go, and they are entitled to be upset by it. Why does their happiness mean more than yours? I agree with another commenter that if the money doesn't matter they should pay you, which I assume they can't since he didn't ask them for the money, or they should encourage him to at least make an apology. Why is it only you who pleads to change? Mark is unapologetic and has not paid back the money. How do you reconcile with someone who has no remorse and therefore demonstrates they would behave the same way again? Comment 2. NTA. Let's call this what it is. Your brother stole $25,000 from you. That's a significant amount, and you would be within your rights to take him to court. You are being gracious by not doing that. You certainly don't have to be in the same room with him. Have to wonder, have your parents loaned him money too? Your parents aren't being AHS for inviting both of you. Maybe as a very kind gesture on your part you can offer to be there for the first hour, say your hellos to their guests, then quietly slip out and your brother can be there for the rest. That way, if he shows up at any point, you have the power to calmly and quietly leave. Comment 3. NTA. No one has to attend a party they've been invited to. If $25,000 is not a lot of money and your parents want you to mend things with your brother, then why don't they make it right and give you the money he owes? I wonder if you could go but have your parents tell Mark not to talk to you at all. That way, you both get time with family but don't interact. My sister, 38F, asked me, 26F, if I would babysit her two daughters, 5F and 4F, while she gives birth to her third child. I told her no because I don't feel comfortable babysitting them. My sister asked me why, and I told her that the girls not getting along and all the trouble between them is more than I could handle for an unknown amount of time. I told her there was nothing that would make me more willing to babysit in these circumstances. For those wondering how bad it can be between them, it's bad. Sibling rivalry, or whatever this is, has been awful between them since they started any kind of independent play. They're very mean to each other. They get very loud together because they'll scream at each other and throw things so the other can't play with it. There is no setting where they can get along. My parents have babysat them together and they told me it was exhausting and none of the consequences for being mean/acting out helped them calm down. My dad said it was like two fighting cats and nothing short of separating them calms things down. My sister and I went out with the girls before she got pregnant. Just a girls' day out. I wasn't even alone with them then and I felt out of my depth. They fought the whole day and the oldest says she hates her sister a lot, while the youngest is the loudest during any fight or when she's expressing an issue with her sister. The hug-it-out method that my sister and her husband use never works. They refuse to touch at all, let alone hug. They can never find a hired babysitter who'll keep the girls for the agreed time. They always get called home early from dates. They've tried over 20 babysitters. My sister is aware of the problems between her girls. She doesn't like when anyone tries to give advice about what to do. So I didn't go into more details with her when I was explaining why. But she said we needed to sit down and have a more in-depth discussion about my reasons because she wants to try and figure something out, seeing as I'm the best person for the job. I told her we have no reason to have this discussion, that she needs to accept my no and find someone else to babysit. She told me it's too risky for her to deliver alone because she's always had complicated deliveries. Her husband needs to be beside her and not home with the girls. So I need to talk this out with her and help her. Comment 1. NTA for refusing to babysit. Although if the only problem with the girls is their behavior when they are together, could you take one of them and your parents take the other? I am not trying to talk you into sitting on a regular basis, but if your sister can't keep a regular sitter under normal circumstances, this might be something to consider as a one-time deal. I don't love how much your sister is pressuring you, though, and if that's reason enough to decline the discussion, It's perfectly justified. Comment 2. NTA. Ike, why your sister is acting surprised that you declined babysitting them for potentially multiple days when you have declined babysitting them for even a few hours in the past. Even if her birth goes quickly and with zero complications, she'll be in L&D for at least 10 to 12 hours. Your reasons for declining are totally valid, and she should respect that. Your parents would be far better candidates for babysitting the girls for that length of time. Did your sister ask them first? OP comment. They already said no. They'll likely be out of town, they have plans to visit friends for a couple of weeks. But my parents also said they're not capable of taking care of both girls. They found it too hard. I've been married to my partner for less than a year, and I'm currently contemplating whether I should stay in this marriage. Here's what's been happening. Recently, a close family member of mine had to undergo what was supposed to be a low-risk surgery. Unfortunately, due to complications caused by the doctor's negligence, an additional surgery was required. During this time, my spouse and I had plans to celebrate an important milestone in our relationship. However, the date fell right in the middle of this health scare with my family, so I cancelled our plans and suggested we reschedule once things calmed down. When I brought this up, my spouse became extremely upset, accusing me of not caring about them and only prioritizing my family. This led to a massive argument, and they even threatened to harm themselves if I didn't put them first. Things got worse. My spouse told both their family and mine that they were feeling unwell, which prompted me to make a long trip to be with them. But when I arrived, I found out they had been out with friends the night before and seemed perfectly fine when I was there. It felt like they manipulated the situation to pull me away from my family during a critical time. Additionally, my spouse isn't contributing much to the household chores, leaving the majority of the work to me. They've also threatened to harm themselves or stop eating if things don't go their way. Financially, we split our expenses equally, but they control how I spend my money, especially when it comes to supporting my family, which was something I made clear was important to me before we got married. Despite this, they criticize me for providing financial support to my family. I feel like I'm stuck in a toxic situation where I'm being emotionally manipulated, and I'm seriously considering leaving. I'd appreciate hearing perspectives, especially from those who have been in similar situations. Am I the asshole for thinking about ending this marriage?